Hello everyone, welcome to this week's Gran Turismo 7 Daily Race and Strategy Guide. We're off to Circuit de Spa Francorchamps in the Ardennes Forest of Belgium, and we are in the Group 2 machinery. We've got one of a longer races for this week, so we've got 24 laps to get around Spa. Tyre wear is at times 2, fuel is at times 1. We've got the racing medium tyres, it is a mandatory pit stop, BOP is on, damage is light, it's a rolling start, slipstream is custom because it's Group 2, and settings are allowed are your brake balance. Now, it has been a wee while since we did one of the longer races. I think it was probably Group 3 at Spa with dynamic weather, but I can tell you from this one there is no dynamic weather in it. It is just a long race in the dry weather. Let's discuss the strategy options and let's discuss what is wrong with this race and how they could potentially and quite easily fix it to make it a little bit more entertaining. So this is the 9 o'clock race. The race is every hour this week. It is definitely not a mistake that it's a longer race, so don't be thinking it's going to change back to a half-hour race at any point. It's very, very unlikely. We've jumped into the Lexus RCF here, so it looks like the 2016 cars are the way to go, and in particular it's going to be that Honda NSX. We'll discuss the OP-ness of the Honda as the video goes on. I decided to jump in the Lexus for this first race of the week, or the second race that went live on the server, to see if we could compete with that NSX in the early stages. Starting down in P16, of course, it was a pretty stacked lobby, to be fair, some very, very fast drivers in front of us, so I wasn't expecting to make a massive amount of progress, but I was hoping maybe with some strategy calls and some crashes and some consistency we could maybe move up into the top 10. But with it being a longer race, you can always be assured that a few people will hit that old quit button when they spin in the early stages, which is a little bit unfortunate. This is definitely a race where we could be benefiting with having a few more drivers on the grid, or at the very least a severe penalty for quitting out. Now, we know they can run more cars, they just for whatever reason they don't do, whether it's server related, whether it's performance related. It's a longer race, they're experimenting a little bit, why not just throw in 24 cars in there and see what the hell happens? That's what I say. Anyway, if there's performance issues, then so be it, these things happen. Put a little disclaimer up somewhere in the race that because they're experimenting with 24 cars, users may experience some performance issues. I don't think anybody, to be frank, would complain too much. Anyway, come to the end of lap 1 here. We've made up a couple of positions from cars that have ran into trouble on the opening lap, and we're putting Jack under a little bit of pressure here as we come out the chicane for the first time. We just can't match that NSX's traction out of the slow corners at this point in the race. So jumping forward here to lap 3, we have caught up with Velasa, who is in the 2006 GTR, and they are holding me up quite badly, and yeah, not really what we needed at this stage in the race when we're already down in P13 and starting to drop behind. But coming down to the back straight here, down towards Blanchimont, we are going to get a good run on that car with the custom slipstream on as well. You do obviously get about, it's about 60% stronger than normal slipstream, so you're going to get a massive boost all the way down the Camel Straight and obviously down this straight as well. I'm going to try and go round the outside here, but then I just figured, we're going to lose so much time, why not try something a little bit different? Let's come into the pits on lap 3. We'll put on a new set of tyres. Fuel is going to be no issue whatsoever, but I was just thinking, you know what, there's an NSX there as well, maybe they start fighting, maybe they start losing some time, maybe we can get some clear air with the new tyres. They're not going to be much better than tyres that people are starting from. In fact, they're not going to be any better at this stage of the race anyway, because tyre wear is pretty low at times too. The Group 2 cars are pretty kind on the tyres as well as the medium tyres, but I thought, a bit of clear track, maybe we can get the undercut on a few drivers and then try and hold on towards the end. Your pit loss is going to be about 19 seconds. Fuel is going to be no issue whatsoever with it only being on ×1. I think you'll probably finish the race with around about 40% of the fuel in the car. So that was the plan for this one. As we exit the pits, come through Eau Rouge and Radion onto the Camel Straight. Let's jump forward to lap 10 here, and we do have a few people starting to pit. Going a little bit earlier than the midpoint. Can we jump a few of them? Yes, we can. We've got Jack just coming out in front of us. We are just coming out ahead of the Spanish driver on the run down to Eau Rouge, and they are in a Nissan GTR. It's nice to see somebody else in something other than a Honda NSX. Now, we have got the tyres warmed up, obviously. They are going to come out on cold tyres, but they just seemed a lot faster than us, so I thought coming down into the chicane, I'm not really racing this driver here, I'm trying to stay ahead of the drivers behind me. I thought I would try and make it nice and easy for them to overtake me into the chicane. I broke early, and for whatever reason they never managed to get the move completed, and it just resulted in me losing a half second that I didn't really want to lose. So coming down into La Source here, we will let the Spanish driver through and then see if we can grab that slipstream for a few laps and get dragged along, because the slipstream, obviously being on custom, you've got two very long drags here. If you're in the slipstream of a faster car, you're just going to get pulled along for the best part of a half a second, which is pretty handy if you're trying to stay ahead of someone. So obviously you can just see the power of the slipstream here. We're not going to go for the move, we're actually just going to stay on the racing line and let it make it clear to them that we are not trying to overtake. So yeah, that plan worked quite well. We managed to stay ahead of Sean and Rory behind us, even though we were on much more worn tyres and in a worse car. So we're doing a really good job, I thought. Consistency on the lap times was good. We've got Jack, who's had a problem of some sort in front of us, and I was thinking, you know, because our tyres are now starting to look a little bit second hand. Remember, we pitted on lap 3, so we've done 17 laps on these tyres now. They are starting to lose a little bit of performance. I was thinking that's good that Jack's had that incident, because we now use that slipstream, as we mentioned earlier, to hopefully stay ahead of the two cars behind, who we are starting to gain a little bit on us per lap. 3 laps to go here. We're going to exit the chicane. Got the slipstream of Jack. I was thinking, okay, this isn't looking too bad at all. It's not going to be the best result in the world, but it was a strong lobby. We're not in the right car, and we did start at the back. And yeah, we can just use Jack's slipstream for the remainder of the race, maybe for a couple of laps. It should be enough for us just to stay ahead in that P12. Now, I did see Jack's indicators come on here, and I was not expecting that at all, though. I was not expecting the car to brake at the bottom of the hill. Looking back on, I could maybe, if I was more aware of it, I could maybe have gone to the right hand side. Jack's in the chat there having some sort of wheel glitch, so I don't know if he had paused it and it was on auto drive and the AI just brakes for the chicane, it just brakes for Eau Rouge. But yeah, broken car, broken engine, race over. Very disappointing, you know, 45 minutes into a race when we're driving pretty well and we're looking like managing to stay ahead of two drivers in quicker cars and better tyres. It was a little bit disappointing for that to happen, but Jack let us back through, so we did not come plumb last in this one. We finished down in P13 for a 50-minute race, folks. 50-minute race. So let's quickly cover your strategy options here. Obviously, you have a mandatory pit stop to make. You do want to be changing the tyres. Now, you probably could go the full 24 laps without changing the tyres, but given that you're only going to gain about 4 seconds at most in a 50-minute race, that's just not going to be worth it. So make sure you're changing those tyres. Your pit window is round about lap 8 to 14. I reckon I did about 14 or 15 laps without any real significant loss of performance. So if you wanted to go for a little bit of an earlier pit stop to try and get an undercut, you could go as early as lap 8. Lap 10 you're still going to maybe undercut maybe people who are going for just a down the middle strategy. Or if you want to go a little bit longer, maybe to lap 14, the tyre should perform reasonably well up to that point. If you're maybe behind a slower driver and feel you can do that overcut, then that is your options. But it's fairly one-dimensional, to be brutally honest with you, with just the racing medium tyres available. Unfortunately, this race has the potential to be quite lonely and boring for a lot of people a lot of the time, just because of the way that Polyphony Digital have set the race up. But what could the PD have done to actually make this one a little bit more interesting? Let's take a look at some potential race improvements. They could have added in multiple tyre compounds. The addition of the soft tyres here would have opened up the strategy massively. You'd have had the interesting concept of actually doing more laps on the harder compound of tyres. I think the soft tyres would only really be good for about 8 or 9 laps. You could have a grid start on a much closer rolling start. The rolling start's not the best at Spa, but if you've got a grid start or a much closer rolling start, which we know they can do from previous World Tour events and back in GT Sport, then it just opens up the chaos in the more interesting opening lap. Keeps everybody much closer together in the early stages. You can make fuel a factor in this one, make fuel just, you know, make it kind of you're a few laps short of fuel if you go full throttle for the entire race, so you've got the option, do I save the fuel over the course of the race, or do I take the penalty at the pit stop and add the fuel in? Dynamic, random weather, I'm not even talking about rain, just have random weather in a random time of day, so sometimes you can have a night race, you can have a morning race, an afternoon race, it could be hazy, it could be misty, it could be overcast, it could be bright sunshine, changes the wind, changes the tyre life, changes the temperature, changes the dynamic of the race in a very slight way. And that Nissan NSX is far too overpowered out of the 2016 cars. It is no slower on the straights than the GTR or the Lexus, but it has much better handling in the middle sector. So some kind of custom BOP on the NSX to make it a little bit slower on the straights, retain its advantage in the corners, would actually bring in a more choice of variety when it comes to the cars. But that's this one all said and done, folks. It's not a bad race, but it's going to be a little bit boring for some of the reasons that I've outlined. The settings could be much better. I've given you my potential improvements. Thank you very much for watching, folks, and I'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye now.